Back with Grand Tactician Civil War, Union Campaign. And we're right here at the tail end of March 1862, which means that winter is ending, has essentially ended, and the campaigning weather is starting up for the second year of the war. Right at the tail end of the last episode, a couple things happened which I hadn't quite registered while I was still recording. But in the last episode, there had been a kind of a late winter push by the Confederates, and they had some sieging going on right in this area. That trench warfare was successful for us, and the Confederate forces retreated. So a couple things right coming out of that I think were occurring, but I didn't notice yet toward the end of the last episode. We have a new Confederate force in the Virginia theater. The Army of Georgia has come up and has besieged the recently retaken Fort Hooker. It's a fairly small action, completely in Union favor. So this isn't a significant battle per se. The First Corps is involved in defending Fort Hooker, but just the fact that there is another active Confederate force in the area. It's only 4,300 troops. But a second, more interesting thing is, after the failed siege of Fort Washington, the Confederate forces retreated. One of those forces was the Confederate Army of Shenandoah, which had come up on the east side into Maryland. And as that army retreated back down this way, there were some riverine forces on the Potomac River. It did not return to Virginia over this river or down here. Instead, it crossed the Chesapeake Bay and is now over here on the eastern shore at Drummondton, where it is building this supply depot. Can't see the icon right now, but I did momentarily have a glimpse of it. But you can see that this supply depot being built. Yeah, there's something here. That's the 12,000-man Army of the Shenandoah. And as far as we know, still commanded by Jackson. So, that presents an opportunity. One other thing I wanted to mention before I get into that. Something I didn't know, something I'd never occurred to me to try, but just it's really kind of a trivia thing, but you can put forts underneath field armies. I did not know this. And so just kind of experimenting with that game mechanic, I created a Department of New England up here in New England, headquartered in Boston. When I formed it, it happened all to spawn in Worcester, but I created a Department of New England. With 2 Corps level district headquarters. One will be in New Hampshire, one in Rhode Island, with 4 forts underneath them. So basically, all of the New England forts are underneath a higher military structure. To be honest, I can't really think of a good reason to do this. Maybe there's some applications to this in other places. Unless you want to create some higher level billets to pigeonhole officers that you don't want in your field armies, but a way to make use of them, I guess. It's something you can do. It does. When you do that, they do fill up this army window, your summary over here on the right. I don't think I'm a big fan about that, but it is possible, and I don't know. Maybe there's some applications for that I haven't thought of. beyond just finding more ways to use low quality officers, but give them something to do. I'm not going to go across and do this all the way across the union, like have a Department of New York and Department of the. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to leave this structure up here, and I might. One thing that I could do with this is maybe use it as a recruiting pool, right? It takes time to recruit and then train up brigades. And I could do that up here and let these guys train them up and then transfer them to an operational army whenever they are ready, kind of like a trained manpower reserve, and then put the brigades where I want them. And that way that will have less overall impact on the readiness of a field army, because they're not having to recruit up these new troops. They're getting already organized brigades. That doesn't, you could do that anyway without the forts. Anyway, enough breath on that. And the final thing I wanted to mention is we've got this case where the Third Corps under Patterson is unhappy because some units don't like their officers. Patterson himself is pretty famous as a result of the combat that has occurred thus far. He's not the problem. If you hover over the morale in this view, you get the tooltip, and it says which specific units are unhappy with their immediate commanders, and it's several brigades plus an artillery battery. 2nd Brigade unhappy with Hancock, who is himself a replacement. I've tried to fix this, but this is the basic problem here. These brigades have seen some combat, they've gotten some experience, so they're at 1, or I think some of them are at 2 stars of experience already. For whatever reason, the units, I'm trying to articulate this correctly. There's a mismatch between the units as they gain experience and the leaders. And I don't quite know if that mismatch is the rate. Do units gain experience faster? I don't think so. But the level which triggers that unhappiness doesn't seem to be quite right. Because I go into these units, let's just look, like one of these is, okay, so 7th Brigade is unhappy with General Stone because of low fame and leadership. So let's just look at General Stone. So this is a they've fought well enough that this is a 2-star infantry brigade, right? That's pretty good, battle experienced. Well, so is Stone. He's battle experienced too. This isn't some new guy that they got in command. This is the commander under which they got their experience. And you look at him, and he's got 2 stars of experience, 2 stars of fame, and 2 stars of leadership. Now, is that super great? No, but it's above average, well above average. And I guarantee that in my pool of officers, available officers, there are very, very few guys interspersed in here that match that, let alone exceed it. So basically, they're unhappy with Stone, but he's among the best I got. I've got other officers who are as good or better, but they're in command positions too. And if I cherry picked all the way through all of these officers, I might find a guy who has at least as good or maybe better stats, but there's not going to be many. You can kind of see where this is going. As more and more units gain experience, they're going to get unhappy with their officers, even if those officers aren't bad. So I think there's kind of a little game mechanic problem here. Well, I say I think. I know there is, because quite a few, you see quite a few posts to this same effect in the Steam discussions. This, I didn't stumble on this by myself. And basically it's a case of, well, there's just not going to be the officers that are going to make these guys happy. So at some point, this unhappy debuff, just something you got to live with. Might be able to fix one brigade here and there, but overall the problem is going to remain the same. And oh, by the way, this is not the only corps that has this. It's the only one showing this unhappy modifier because it has several units affected as such. But if I look at the second corps, not showing the unhappy modifier, but they've got a brigade that's unhappy with Harney as well. And, well, can't see the first corps because they're involved in that Fort Hooker thing. Anyway, so it seems to me that we have an opportunity to isolate and potentially disintegrate the army of the Shenandoah, because he's come across the bay and he's now isolated on this eastern shore. I think he needed this port to get here. So my idea is, we've got several shallow water squadrons in the area, one of which I just formed up here, eventually intended for service on the James River. If I can move these squadrons over, kind of isolate and especially ensure that this port is covered, and then march down with the Army of the Chesapeake. I do not know. I've seen armies cross rivers, enter or leave a river at some location other than a river port plenty of times. I don't think that is possible with ocean movement. I think a land force needs a port in order to go into ocean movement. This stretch of water in the Chesapeake Bay, I'm not 100% sure whether that is considered riverine or ocean water. In other words, I don't know if the Army of the Shenandoah needs this port to get waterborne again in the bay. I am pretty sure, over 90% sure, they would need a port in order to escape on the ocean side, and there isn't one. So this is essentially an impassable barrier here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily move all these squadrons down and kind of blanket this bayside shore. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to march the Army of the Chesapeake down. So the intelligence estimate last seen on the Army of the Shenandoah is 12,000 men. Army of the Chesapeake is 15,000, not that much bigger, but this is a newly raised force. Whereas the Army of the Shenandoah has, although they've lost most of their, or all of their fights, Army of the Shenandoah has seen a fair amount of combat. So I believe that there's probably several units there which are experienced. So what I'm going to do is I am going to transfer temporarily. I'll move them back, but I'm going to transfer one of these more experienced divisions. Trying to decide which one. These are the two divisions, Kimes and Sanfords, that have some unhappy brigades in them. Which means these are the experienced guys. I'm going to go ahead and transfer Kimes' division over to Smith's Army of the Chesapeake. Temporarily. If I can. Okay. There's a direct rail link. Yeah, it shouldn't take that long for those guys to get over there. 3 days. And once they arrive, I'll see if Smith will use rail movement and zip right down here to Salisbury, Maryland, and see what his supply situation there. If Salisbury is a strong enough infrastructure point to keep him supplied. By the time the troops move over and he moves down, the river squadrons should be in place along the bay here. And then we'll move in and see what we can do against Jackson's corps. And as long as I'm doing that, I may as well move down the Ironclad squadron as well. All right, let's unpause. These are those New England forces. Headquarters in Boston, the North New England District at Concord, New Hampshire, and the South New England District at Providence. There's no troops in those corps other than the garrisons of the forts. And there's the Army of Georgia repulsed from Fort Hooker as expected. Which means Fort Hooker should be eligible now to put a new commander in there. I had not gotten to fixing that up before. Let's see. He does have a little bit of fame. Rousseau's actually pretty good. I should probably find a real job for him somewhere. No fame. I think a fort command is perfect for Captain Mager. And I'm going to give him a couple of artillery batteries. I used to garrison a fort that I actually expected might actually get attacked, which these two forts have changed hands twice already, so they fall in that category. But my typical practice has been to just put a smaller brigade into them and give them a garrison of about 1,500 men. I'm trying something different. The idea being that for a fort, it's the artillery that matters. So instead of putting an infantry brigade in them, I'm putting batteries in them instead. Not upgrading the guns. They're just 6-pound. You know, I'm not using good guns on them, but I'm giving them more guns than the default, and that should be less of a manpower drain while increasing their. That's the idea. I've read some stuff online of other people doing that and seeming to have some success with it. I'm going to turn off these battlefield monuments. They kind of get in the way when I'm trying to click on stuff. Yeah, there's the army of the Shenandoah. Currently suffering attrition because he's over here insufficient supply after his retreat. Might be drawing some supply from this port, which one would hope is perhaps impeded by these the presence of these forces, naval forces. I hope they are. Move this ironclad squadron down just a bit. I'm trying to get this whole stretch of coastline covered by the combat radius of these various squadrons. Okay, now, have these guys arrived? They have. Let's move Smith down to Salisbury. Enable rail transport to do so. And if it looks like he's getting good supply from Salisbury, you can continue moving him down. If he's not, then I may have to build a supply depot first. Where are you getting supply from? Okay, I think he's getting supply from Salisbury. It's hard to tell because he's sitting right on it, but he's at 100%. He's not drawing supply from anywhere else. All right. Get Smith to move on down the peninsula. No need to force march or anything like that. What? That doesn't make any sense. All you have to do is walk down a road. Well, that seems kind of game glitchy. I don't know what was going on there. Right, we've got another siege going, so they back. Army of Georgia is back. Seems pretty quick. Also seems like it will be, again, completely in our favor. But the Army of the Potomac may now come over and get involved. I'm just going to go ahead and move 2nd Corps up within range. Third Corps can sit here for the moment. He's kind of rebuilding Fort Washington anyway. And he's got a division missing over here, supporting Smith. In the meantime, Hooker's Corps has picked up a 2nd perk. He's got Cartographer. What did I do with... I think the 3rd Corps got a 2nd perk. I did... Ooh. Skilled Cartographer, Flying Column, and the 3rd Corps now has a 3rd perk available. Foot cavalry is pretty tempting, but you have to use forced marches to level it up. I don't really use forced marches all that much. BMI looks pretty good. Balloon Court, double-edged sword. Improves your intelligence gathering by a lot. However, it also increases order delays. Because, which makes sense. The Corps gets an order to move. And the first thing it does, before doing anything else, while getting ready, is it goes and it sends up these balloons and looks around the countryside before it does anything. So it makes sense to me that it increases order delays. But, I don't know. I do like intel. I don't know if I like it that much. Field telegraph, decrease order delays. Do seem to be doing more sieges in this campaign than I usually did in the past. This is actually fairly attractive. Movement speed across small rivers, 25%. Supply efficiency, 10%. That's pretty attractive. More for the supply efficiency than the movement buff. Really like the ambulance score. I'd kind of like to keep that at the army level. But I don't think the army... we do. We do have... yeah, let's go ambulance corps at the army level. Like that. I don't think I've ever tried the pontoon thing before. I'm going to go with that. So cartographer, flying column, and pontoon train. I don't know if it lets me pick a perk during battle. It does. And you can see the effect of the inactivity over the winter. They weren't completely idle. The first corps is up to regular training status. Third corps is regular. And can I get the click on the second corps? Yes, no? Second corps, which was formed later than the other two, is still at poor. Wonder how McClellan's little army is doing on training. McClellan's Army of the Kanawha at regular. And Army of the Missouri, regular. Sure, Army of the Ohio is still lower. Yeah. First is poor, and yeah, they're at poor. They are, however, both ready, and it is April now. So I'm gonna get the Army of the Ohio on the move. First things first, I'm gonna come down into this area and move the Army headquarters to Harrodsburg. Second Corps to Munfordville. And First Corps to Harrodsburg. I'm going to deviate a little bit from my plan. The first thing I'm going to have the Army of the Missouri do, bring it back down here and reassert control over the town of Rolla. And the reason I'm doing that is because there's a railroad here. This is the if I can find it. Is that it? No? Yes. No. Yeah, that's it. There's a railroad here, which mostly goes through central Missouri up to probably Chicago. No, to Indianapolis, apparently. And the one stop on this railroad that is under Confederate control is Rolla. So if I come down here, I regain complete control of this railroad, which should give me a little bit more income. Because you get sales tax for stuff that is transported along the railroads. And it'll improve transport capacity a tiny bit. So I want this little railroad spur back under Union control. And then I think the Missouri State Guard is probably somewhere over here, drawing supply from this. Well, that's a mine there, but right next to it is a depot. And I think I may come over here and regain control over Fredericton. Now that Lyon has a little bit more kind of combat ready force, 11,000 men. I don't know why this army just teleported up and then came down by sea. That makes no sense. I'd kind of like to hit Jackson before the supply depot completes. Or would have liked to do so. Note the Army of the Potomac moving back, retreating. Okay, the Confederacy has chosen military too. So that's going to increase their recruitment pool, and they are now going to start organizing in this Army Corps structure as well. What they probably won't do is change the names of their units. So, you know, it's still going to be the Confederate Army of the Potomac and Army of Georgia. They'll just be corps now, just for somebody. Okay, Army of Georgia is retreating again, as expected. No, they are changing names. So down here we've got the Army of, well, there we go, Army of Northern Virginia. And they did rename it. The old Army of the Potomac is now Longstreet's Corps. So we have the one Army command and for 27,000 men, and all 27,000 men appear to be in this one corps. Wonder who the AI put in command of the Army of Northern Virginia. Just kind of waiting there for the Army of the Chesapeake to get down to get down to the border again. Okay, these forts aren't getting enough supply. And it would make sense to have a supply depot in this area. Okay, Army of the Chesapeake, still 100% supply. Okay. So it looks like the conditions are set to force a battle here and attack the Army of the Shenandoah. Been running about 45 minutes. I believe that will wait until the next episode. Thank you for watching.